Hello, I'm Jane Barton of Turnstone Genealogy. I've been studying the parishes of Westward and Boltons in northern Cumbria for some years now. The road through the village of Bolton Low Houses was something of an accident black spot, and the village was eventually bypassed. So I was searching the newspapers for reports of fatal accidents, as you do, when I came across something else entirely. So today, I'm going to tell you about what I found when I fell down this particularly unsanitary rabbit hole. The article was entitled "The Dangers of Village Wells, Outbreak of Typhoid in Cumberland." It was published in the Penrith Observer on the 21st of November 1899, and it read as follows. A serious outbreak of typhoid fever has occurred at the village of Bolton Low Houses near Wigton, there being 39 cases altogether. The well water is blamed as the chief cause, but the whole village appears to be in a very unsanitary state. Up to the present time there have been only 2 fatalities, but many are lying very dangerously ill. The report of the medical officer of the district, Dr. Briggs, disclosed a shocking state of things in the village. The water in the well, which supplies practically the whole village, on being analysed, was found to contain a very large amount of organic matter. The want of drainage, the collection of excrementitious matter in badly constructed ash pits, etc., have combined in making the subsoil sodden with filth, and this has been washed into the well, hence the epidemic. First of all, let me introduce you to Bolton Low Houses. It's a small group of agricultural workers' cottages, clustered around a couple of farms and inns. The neighbouring hamlet of Brough Hill is just a few farms and a row of cottages. By the date of the typhoid epidemic, many of the cottages were occupied by miners. I have a strong family connection to this place. One of my great-grandfathers grew up in a cottage in Bolton Low Houses. Another lived all his life in Brough Hill. The villages lie on the road between the market towns of Wigton and Cockermouth, with Carlisle to the northeast and the port of Whitehaven to the southwest. Allhallows Colliery, 2 miles away, had expanded rapidly in the mid-1890s, to the point that mining had overtaken farm labouring as the main form of employment. And take note of Overwater, the most northerly lake in the Lake District, nestled on the flanks of Skiddaw, where the high ground gives way to the Solway Plain. The events leading up to the typhoid outbreak of 1899 and the actions taken to rectify the situation can be followed in the local newspapers, which published detailed reports of council meetings. The following account has been put together using extracts from the Wigton Advertiser, the West Cumberland Times and the Carlisle Journal, all of which can be accessed via the British Newspaper Archive on Find My Past. The story begins at the December 1894 meeting of the Wigton Rural District Council, when the medical officer, Dr. Briggs, reported 5 cases of typhoid in Bolton Low Houses. Mr. Tate, the sanitary inspector, went to investigate, and at the January meeting reported that the drainage required attention, but laid at least part of the responsibility for this on the County Council. By May, remedial work was underway. The West Cumberland Times was clearly of the opinion that it was long overdue, that in hot weather the smell was so bad that people had to hold their breath as they passed by. The paper also questioned the siting of wells and called for the water to be analysed. At the June Council meeting, it was reported that the drainage work was complete, except for in New Street. The well had been relined to stop surface water getting in, and a pump installed. Improvements to the well at Brough Hill were recommended, this being the responsibility of the owner of the properties there. By July, the work was complete, and everyone was happy. Well, not quite. In New Street, which lay below the fall of the main sewer, the cost of the work to connect the houses was prohibitive. The owner of these properties said he would have no difficulty in getting his tenants to convey their slops to the gullies across the road, which was not a great distance. Well, can you imagine? And as for the well at Brough Hill, the owner wrote a strongly worded letter to the editor of the Wigton Advertiser to express his views on who should pay for the improvements. Well, it was not him. Trouble was brewing. Indeed, as early as November 1895, Bolton Parish Council began to voice concerns about the unsanitary conditions in the village. And I've included both William Brown's letter and the response from the chairman of the council for your entertainment. Feel free to stop the video and have a read. My next step was to take a really close look at a large-scale ordnance survey map. The area was surveyed in 1899, so the mapping is contemporary with the typhoid outbreak. It shows the location of the wells, 2 in Bolton Low and 2 in Brough Hill, the public and private pumps in Bolton Low, and I've also highlighted the location of New Street. Moving forward then to 1899, at a district council meeting on the 16th of November, the medical officer reported that there were 38 cases of typhoid in Bolton Low Houses and gave a detailed account of the unsanitary conditions in the village. Analysis of the well water showed it to be contaminated with sewage. Close to the well were 2 privies and an open ash pit, used by 12 cottages, none of which had any drainage. The cottages themselves were single-storey and poorly ventilated, with no back door or outside space. Recent heavy rain had exacerbated the problem. On the 23rd of November, Bolton Parish Council met to discuss the situation, concerned that reports had been cast on the habits and cleanliness of the villagers. In their view, the cause of the outbreak was the poor design of the sewer, which wanted lifting and giving more fall, and the contamination of the well from the open ash pits. The sanitary inspector agreed, describing the current arrangement as a death trap. By the 12th of December, the ash pits had been cleared and a temporary solution for the disposal of waste had been found, so as to contain the epidemic, but a permanent site for the sewage outflow had yet to be identified. Despite a letter from the local government board asking what action was being taken, no further actions were agreed at this time. The chairman's complacent comment that he expected everything was being pushed forward was met by a terse response from the medical officer. Much criticism had been levelled at the owner of the houses in New Street, Mr. Mallinson. I include here his letter to the editor, in which he defends himself by outlining the impossibility of the task he'd been given. Have a read and judge for yourself. By the spring, they had started to come up with solutions. At the May 1900 meeting of the Rural District Council, it was reported that a new well had been sunk and a new pump installed in Miss Barnes's field at Greenfoot. The old well and pump were to be used to flush out the relayed sewer pipe, and a new outflow was to be sited on land at Buck Hill Farm, although they were still awaiting a signed agreement from the owner. The whole scheme relied heavily on the use of private facilities to provide public services, and this incurred ongoing costs. Mr. Spencer, the landlord of the Globe Inn, made several requests for compensation for the use of his private pump when the village pump was unusable, and in 1902 Miss Barnes asked for further payment for having a public well on her property. In 1903, the Overwater scheme got the go-ahead from neighbouring Aspatia Urban District Council, and the first discussions began to take place between them and Wigton Rural to connect parts of Bolton's to the new water main at Mealsgate. Although this was vehemently opposed by the Reverend Eubank of Bolton Gate, who felt it was unfair for ratepayers who had already paid for private water supplies to foot the bill for everyone else. Wigton Rural was also in discussion with Wigton Urban to connect Bolton New Houses to their new scheme. Bolton Low Houses, equidistant between the two, looked expensive either way, but was eventually connected to the Overwater main in 1910, more than 15 years after the first typhoid outbreak in 1894. Many themes emerge from the accounts of these events, including the technical challenges of providing safe water and sanitation to outlying rural communities, the tensions and obfuscation between parish, district and county councils, conflicts of interest between landowners and tenants, and between rich and poor, and the importance of the role of the medical officer, whose scathing comments in council meetings are a delight. His story is worthy of another 10-minute talk. He trained under Lister in Edinburgh, but I will just leave his Wikipedia link here for now. So what have I gained from this unsanitary rabbit hole? An awareness of the usefulness of newspaper reports on council meetings as a convenient substitute for meeting minutes, which are generally held in county archives and can be difficult to access from a distance. An appreciation of the extent to which the documentation of infrastructure projects, on the face of it pretty dull, can actually shed light on the living conditions of ordinary people. A better understanding of local politics in my place, and some wonderful snapshots of some of the people who lived there. A highlight for me was a detailed description of the house my great-grandfather grew up in. Yes, he lived in New Street. And a much clearer picture of the community and way of life in Bolton Low Houses at the end of the 19th century. I hope you've enjoyed this talk. If you have any comments or questions, please do get in touch. And thank you for listening.